I think about it, if I take into the theory of placement, you take squares, you take circles, you take triangles. I know it's elementary, but promise, work with me. We know that squares, are they soft or are they strong? They're strong. But what if I actually shifted the line inside of it, right? Diagonal softened it. Circles, soft or strong? They're softer than, but really isn't a circle a square with the corners cut off? Yeah? It still has strength to it because I can make this guy really, really solid. And here, I think the triangles are wicked because points give us direction. They allow us in movement of where to go. And if I see here, I can open this up, I can have the softness and the strength. But what if I were to tie them together? Cool. Think about the 3 essential lines, and again, I know this is so elementary, but I promise you there's method to the madness. Here, often, if I'm placing this horizontal line back to the hair hat, I'm smothering the hair, because if I look at it on the side and I go from a 6 to a 7 to an 8 level, the client's probably going to tell you, it's so light, looks so blonde. Or an 8 to a 7 to a 6, it's so brown, it's too dark, I need some highlights. So here, on a bob line, I see color often, and this is where I look inside of automobiles, I look inside of nature, thinking about how often do I see a precision line bob, a precision fringe, the fringe is here and the color stops short of it. Or on a bob line, I see all the panels sitting side by side. So in this gunshot-like effect, and I think about here, squares are great, but if you're doing just the choo-choo track train, right, and I look at it on the side of the head, of course, why did it get lost? Because it turned into a really weird a vertical line that just fell through. Because the parietal round, the head has movement. I think that squares are really good, but I think that squares are perfect if the head is shaped like that. That's just my opinion. But with it, I mean, it's funny. And, you look at why these people, they love things like, what is Jennifer Aniston, right? I wanted to look like Jennifer Aniston. I want to look like Ava Mendez. What's beautiful about their coloring is you can't see where it starts and where it ends, right? It just is. And it looks good up, down, smooth, wavy. And a favorite patterning, and I actually did it on the brunette canvas, if I think about these 4 zones within the head, these will either showcase or smother, aerial shot. Working now, tying arrows together, a general partial highlight standard rule would be what? 32 on the top, 2 on the sides. I pull my hair up, let's put some in an 8. Level 10, shooting off the neck, because that looks natural somewhere. Here, also, repetition and alternation, I look at, let's dissect the zones. One of my most favorite ways to put accent, shadow, detail, working with shades like turquoise, maybe working with shades like pistachio. How can I put reflective detail by these points now, allowing color to move and fall into the point? So working over the back of the crown, I'm bringing color low, working my way up over the round, because you think about it, how often do I place a foil just like that on the round contour? You don't, because it's going to look wrong. But we have the ability as colorists to reduce weight, to add volume, and give length. So why not through the middle zone of the head? Horizontal lines are good because it does have that strength, but it's going to push up fantastic volume into the hair, as well as when it moves into the side, I'm still working within the round contour. Now into the front. I joke about the gunshot here, but how many times did you ever have to recover a blonde that she's a full highlight, but then she became the blonde headband around her face, right? And it's kind of funny. They're like, I don't remember them cutting my fringe, but I think I might like it. Is this new hair? Is that new? Yeah, sure. But around the face, you think about it, I already have the exterior circle. There, what if I were to place a diagonal push around the front that looks great whenever the hair goes back, down, left, right? Okay, so it's never going to show and tell. So even into this form at 12 foils, perfect. In the back of the head, let's just bring it together. If this is my back point, vertical placement, there. If it falls to the side, they're going to do what? Become horizontal, right? They're building up strength and showcasing the next. This is going to give continuity and bring color lower around the face, as well as these guys are going to continue to fall, overlap together, so it's perfect. Because oftentimes I see a full head of highlights with layers, and it looks like a crash at an intersection, right? That the color stops here, here, here. That looks natural. So if I think about this, let's tie this together, and then we're going to do some hair. Thinking about movement of the back and the front of the head, I like to say that each will mirror each other. So connecting from this main point, what if I continue my vertical placement throughout the back? Still work in the occipital zone, because oftentimes I see clients come in that this has been left dark because it's uncomfortable to work in, right? And it can look like a mistake. And then around the outside, still a diagonal form. On the side of the head, one last, boom, ear. I want to stay disciplined, continue the vertical placement, work the horizontal lines, and a diagonal wrap around the outside. This would really go over the full head, working within an entire section and making it a full highlight, but I could work it within 40 foils even. If color sits in the right position, it will just explode off of the head. Why do I need to put so much more in whenever a client wants a change? Or especially whenever that high blonde wants to now be blonder, okay? You guys feel all right? You're good? Get it? Okay. So if I think about this, I'm going to pull up PowerPoint for 2 seconds, guys. Maybe. Hey, get it? Okay. So with it, I always think, what is in harmony and alternation? Do I have contrast, repetition, and diffusion? Looking at all of the details inside, where do I want to go with each canvas? All right? Thinking about tying these shapes together, I find, of course, the strength and the softness from this hard grid, but put into a soft beveled edge. The points of this building, it looks like it's actually supporting the entire structure, but it's natural movement. We see these forms of design everywhere. And what makes this circular structure so strong is the horizontal lines that it sits beside. Taking a fender design, right, or a tail light, look at that curve. The point, the strength of the circle, I could place horizontal lines inside of that, but it's going to still explode over the head and still be softer than the little hair hat, right? Looking at shadow and contrast, thinking about nature, how do I actually take a sunset and turn it into this? How can you take color contrast of violet and green and turn it into something like this on a beveled edge? A bit further, looking at the shadow stories, how can you melt color throughout within 6 foils, have a high impact of color, tones together of turquoise of Merlot? That same turquoise is what we're going to be using through this blonde canvas, but it's not going to be strong blue. I'm using it as a shadow because what kind of slice and detail do I need in here? I want something that just provides me a little bit of movement, a little bit of interest. Looking inside of the cars, opacity meets reflection. Thinking about how is that story going to come to life within the color and making it a beautiful, clean, melted bob line. How can I take something old, thinking about alternation of color, and turn it into something really reflective by taking this pistachio green? Pistachio green, I look at, how can I actually cool off a brunette by taking a green base as well as mixing a golden base, but still neutralize out all of the warmth, okay? Going throughout again, thinking about the softness, same simple sectioning that I've just drawn is exactly what's happening on this front piece of the blonde. Right? It creates shadow. Maybe not everyone's going to wear pink, but at the same, how can I take those tones, just like we've done in Paulina, and create beautiful Nordic colors? I think about the shape of the whole foliage collection, thinking about the round of the head. How do you take a flower and make them unique? Right? Working within those zones, just looping it out. Thinking about simplistic placements as they come together. Looking inside of architecture of design, the main focal point, working in circles, is at the top of the lid, right? It's the main interest. But everything then is melted through. Turning it into a quick design, working through the interior of the head, slicing onto the sides, and then whatever patterning I want to put in, perfect. Falls high, medium to low, done. Creating contrast, and I can go back to these slides after too. Creating the contrast, how do I make something really, really strong within color placement, right? Looking at the whites to the blacks to the reds. And then, of course, looking at all of the smoky tones, but the oval movement, right? Everything has purpose instead of color stopping short, here. So take it into another strong design as whispers. The first was turned into the wooden staircase, is how we actually mimicked this canvas. Working blonde, shadow through the interior, easy. The white, black, and the red is how we actually worked into the tones of a beautiful, strong red bob line and melted illusion, how I want to see tones creating a haze effect. And then, of course, this is my boy, Lady Gaga, Alejandro. Blah. But with that, in Awakening, this is something that I want to create those navies and those Nordic silvers to create perfect shadows versus making it always a shade of slate. Cool? And I tell myself in design every single day that life is not a dress rehearsal. I'm not a Hallmark card by any means, but at the same time, if you're bored, it's your fault, right? You got to live in and love it to create it. So with it, let's do some hair. Get it? Okay. Now, main interest, we have this really fantastic hair shape here on Paulina, but what we're going to do is I want to create some shadow throughout the detail. Working into a curve, I'm going to take an asymmetrical spin around the edges. And guys, we can go back to screen again, please. Oh, and magic. Okay. Working from a high point to the round, into the head, creating contrast. Down just a little bit. High, width, to low point. And drop. No, not you, baby, I'm sorry. But you're on cue. Love it. Now, through the sides, what we're going to do. I don't want to overwork it, and I don't want it to become hair hat. But again, thinking about the interest, I want a connection point to my front. So I'm going to work through the interior. Just to create shadow, we're going to bring this back. Pin down. Thank you. And here, just to showcase the line. So working on curves with point direction together, perfect. Bring it in. A little just from the disconnection. Sorry, Yolanda. Now I'm like, oh, what, you can't reach that? No, sorry. I'm the Jolly Green Giant. It's okay. All right. And one more, working on point from my side and bringing this down. So 3 heavy points, petite, medium, and large. I want to see color diffuse throughout all of them together. So if I'm looking at it as a head shape and a blueprint, within the design form, from the side of the head, remember the 4 weighted zones. I'm coming from high to low, point into the front, point into the front. So we'll have this as our first. From the opposite side, connection, boom, and boom. And from the opposite, always connecting, boom, and boom. So we're just working the contour color into those round sections. I always think about the strength of that circle, right? Remember, it has strength to it if I made it solid. But really, it's still square with the corners cut off. So it has lots of great movement and control. It's just softer than. And then here, thinking about the point of the arrow. It allows me to create movement of color so it doesn't stop, right? You're never going to have the intersection crash if I work from high point to low point. Now within, let's build together. And I'm going to use just a couple of the Illumine papers as well. Yes, please. Into the shadow detail,